okay, you're saying something that's actually factually inaccurate
Right.
according to the narrative. Now, let's be real clear. I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird going on.
In a wild turn, Joe Rogan stirred up major attention on his podcast after openly questioning parts of the reported story surrounding what happened to Charlie Kirk. Rogan made it clear that he has doubts about whether every detail adds up, and those comments quickly kicked off a heated debate online, with people picking apart his claims from every angle. Rogan described parts of the situation as seriously strange, pointing to details he believes don't line up cleanly.
Really?
I almost texted you when the Charlie Kirk thing happened because my antennas went up about, they showed the photo of that kid, or the guy that they have, the 22-year-old,
Yeah.
whatever. And I was almost going to be like, dude.
He brought up reports and online claims involving an alleged decoy suspect who some people have tried to connect with other suspicious cases. But those connections have not been established as fact, so the internet speculation is moving much faster than the verified evidence. Then Rogan pushed even deeper, questioning details ranging from the alleged shooter's skill level to reports surrounding the weapon itself. He summed up his skepticism by saying the story has more holes than Swiss cheese. And that line immediately grabbed attention. Clips and reactions started flying across social media, with supporters agreeing with his questions, while critics warned against turning unanswered questions into evidence of a bigger plot. And now things are getting even messier. Online rumors have started suggesting that people close to Kirk may know more than they have publicly revealed, with some posts even dragging his wife into the speculation. There is no verified evidence presented here proving those accusations, though, so they should not be treated as facts. Still, the controversy around Rogan's comments keeps getting louder as people wait to see what credible evidence actually shows next. That's right, this story took a seriously messy turn, and the details only got more intense from there. The fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves across the country, turning what began as a public campus event into a tragedy that instantly sparked questions, debate, and non-stop attention. Kirk was shot on September 10, 2025, while appearing at a student event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah.
This kid had a rifle with a scope. Now, here's where it gets weird. The first images of this rifle with a scope, I swear to God, it looks like he has a composite stock on it. Like it looks like a modern 30-06 rifle.
What was supposed to be a regular public discussion suddenly turned into a terrifying scene, with attendees scrambling as emergency responders rushed to help. Despite efforts to save him, Kirk later died from his injuries. News of his death spread rapidly, and the case quickly became the center of a massive investigation. With people online dissecting videos, timelines, and witness accounts, verified information started getting mixed with rumors and theories almost immediately. Then came the manhunt. After roughly 33 hours of searching, authorities arrested 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who was identified as the suspect in the case. But the arrest didn't stop the questions. It brought even more attention to the evidence, the timeline, and exactly what investigators say happened that day. Now, Robinson is facing extremely serious charges, including aggravated murder and felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury. And that has people watching every new development like a hawk. With stakes this high, every piece of evidence and every statement from investigators is getting picked apart online. At first, the case might look pretty straightforward on paper. But Joe Rogan's comments threw another layer of controversy into the mix. Speaking on his podcast, Rogan openly questioned whether investigators had the full picture yet, saying, "I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird stuff happening, and that was enough to send internet sleuths into overdrive." People immediately started digging through whatever information they could find.
First of all, there was that one guy who was the decoy. All right, so you got this guy who's an older guy who starts yelling out. Didn't he take his pants down? He took his pants down. This guy was at 9/11. He was at the Boston bombing.
All the hits.
He called in a fake bomb at another place, and then he did this at this thing.
Rogan brought up unusual claims circulating around the case, including talk of a possible decoy suspect allegedly connected to other criminal cases. Those claims haven't been established as fact here, but Rogan argued that the unanswered questions gave him reasons to remain skeptical about what was publicly known. Then the conversation shifted to the weapon, and Rogan sounded seriously doubtful. Reports describe the firearm as a restored World War I era rifle, meaning the original design dates back more than a century. Rogan questioned whether an old weapon that had reportedly been taken apart and restored could perform in the way being described, adding yet another disputed detail for listeners to examine. Could even pull off a shot that precise and controlled. That's the part Rogan said just didn't sit right with him. He laid out his doubts openly, and plenty of listeners online quickly started debating the same questions. As the conversation continued, Rogan sounded increasingly frustrated with what he viewed as inconsistencies surrounding the case. Joe even joked about jumping into the investigation himself, but his comments carried a more serious edge underneath the humor. He appeared genuinely skeptical about whether the public had been given the complete picture. Rogan raised the possibility that there could be more to the story, even discussing suspicions of a potential cover-up, but he did not establish evidence proving that such a cover-up actually existed. Then another major commentator jumped into the controversy. Candace Owens weighed in with an explosive allegation of her own, claiming that the public may have been misled about the case. She went even further by saying she believes Tyler Robinson was framed over the weekend, a serious accusation that should be treated as her claim, not as a confirmed finding. Owens also teased that she had received new information and suggested that parts of what authorities publicly presented about the Charlie Kirk case didn't add up.
So somehow or another, this guy has the state of mind that the moment someone gets shot, he yells out and says, I did it, and takes his pants down or something like that. I don't know exactly what he did. Then, ready for this? He gets arrested for child porn right away.
Right after this happened?
Oh, right away. He's in jail for child porn. Why?
Her comments immediately gave online speculation another lane to run down. But unless supporting evidence verifies those claims, questions about framing, hidden players, or some larger operation remain exactly that. Questions and allegations, not established facts. Candace Owens didn't just toss out a couple of questions, she pushed the conversation into even more controversial territory. Her latest comments quickly got people online digging for answers and trying to figure out exactly what she was suggesting. Owens claimed that while looking deeper into the case, the name of an unnamed politician unexpectedly surfaced, which she suggested could mean the situation is more complicated than it first appeared. And she didn't stop there. Owens also questioned whether law enforcement could be presenting the case in a way that shapes how the public sees what happened. That's a serious allegation, and no proof establishing such manipulation is presented here, but her comments still kicked off a heated debate among people already skeptical of the official account. In Owens's view, the version being presented to the public could simply be another narrative designed to keep people calm. She continued pointing toward what she described as details that don't fit neatly together, arguing that the unanswered questions deserve closer attention rather than being brushed aside. One of her biggest questions centered directly on Tyler Robinson. Owens questioned whether he was actually the shooter and focused on the circumstances surrounding his surrender. She asked why someone would turn themselves in so quickly without, according to her characterization, confessing to the shooting. That doesn't prove Robinson was framed or uninvolved, but for Owens and her audience, it became another detail fueling the controversy. Then Owens zeroed in on the reported bullet markings that investigators allegedly used to connect Robinson to the weapon. According to her account, Robinson appeared completely thrown off when those details were brought up, almost as if he didn't understand what investigators were referring to. Owens told her audience that his reported reaction immediately raised another red flag for her, but her interpretation of that reaction isn't proof by itself. Then the weapon controversy came roaring back. Reports linked the firearm to Robinson, but Owens pushed hard against what she saw as another strange detail, arguing that Robinson wasn't known as someone heavily interested in guns. According to her, he wasn't a gun collector and didn't regularly go shooting for fun, which she suggested didn't match the picture being presented publicly.
The narrative is that this is his grandfather's rifle from World War I and doesn't have a serial code. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Why? Wait. Why are you using such an old gun? That's the other thing. They said that he took it apart and then put it back together again. Shut the fuck up. Do you know how much time?
That doesn't automatically mean the reported evidence is wrong, but Owens used it to keep challenging the case against him. The deeper she went, the more she argued that certain details simply weren't clicking together the way people might expect. Then she turned to the alleged text messages reportedly connected to Robinson before the attack. Owens claimed the wording didn't sound natural for him, specifically pointing to formal terms, such as vehicle, and arguing that he didn't normally speak that way. On its own, word choice can't establish who wrote a message, but Owens presented it as yet another detail she believes deserves much closer scrutiny. But what really turned heads was Owens's version of how Tyler Robinson surrendered. The widely circulated account said his father helped convince him to turn himself in, but Owens pushed back hard against that version. According to her, the events didn't unfold quite that way, and her claim opened up a whole new round of questions about what actually happened before Robinson ended up in custody. Owens claimed that a family friend was the person who alerted Robinson's family that authorities had publicly identified him as the suspected shooter. If her account is accurate, she argues, that could change how people interpret the surrender. Instead of automatically viewing it as some kind of confession, she suggested it could have been a rapid response to learning that police were looking for him. That distinction got people talking fast. Turning yourself in does not by itself prove guilt or innocence, and Owens used that point to challenge the assumptions she believes people were making about Robinson's actions. Then she introduced another explosive angle. Owens pointed to reports that Charlie Kirk had discussed a major internal audit involving Turning Point USA roughly a week before his death. She suggested the timing deserved attention, and online sleuths quickly started connecting dots. But timing alone doesn't establish a connection between an audit and Kirk's death. So any suggestion that the two events were linked remains speculation unless supported by credible evidence. According to Owens, that internal audit was supposed to dig into what she described as a hidden department operating inside the organization, a secretive rogue unit. She also claimed the audit involved questions about millions of dollars that allegedly couldn't be properly accounted for. Those are major accusations, and without verified evidence backing them up, they remain Owens's claims rather than established facts. But Owens took the theory even further. She suggested that whatever was happening behind the scenes could potentially provide another motive worth examining. In her telling, the real story might be much darker and more complicated than what the public has heard so far. Still, no credible evidence presented here establishes that the alleged audit, missing money, or supposed rogue unit had anything to do with Kirk's death. Now, mix Candace Owens' explosive allegations with Joe Rogan's public skepticism, and you can see why the Charlie Kirk case has become such a heated topic online. Their comments have kicked off a wave of theories, questions, and serious debate, with internet sleuths examining every new detail that surfaces. But amid all that noise, there's a huge difference between asking tough questions and proving a theory. And right now, many of the biggest claims being circulated remain disputed or unverified. And Rogan wasn't done pushing questions into the spotlight, not even close. Back on his podcast, he kept digging into what he viewed as some of the strangest details surrounding the case, highlighting moments that he believed deserved a much closer look. One detail especially grabbed his attention: the man some people online described as a possible decoy around the time of the shooting. Rogan discussed reports of an older man behaving erratically in the chaotic aftermath of the gunfire, creating even more confusion at an already terrifying scene. According to accounts Rogan discussed, the man allegedly began shouting, "I did it! I did it!" while people nearby were still trying to understand what had just happened. Naturally, behavior like that could cause serious confusion in the immediate aftermath, especially while authorities were working to identify the actual suspect and determine what was going on. But Rogan argued that the incident raised even more questions. And that's where the story takes another strange turn. Claims have circulated online attempting to connect this individual to other major incidents from the past, but those alleged connections have not been established here with credible evidence. For now, they remain unverified claims rather than proof of some larger connection. That uncertainty adds yet another layer of confusion to an already messy situation. People are trying to separate what can actually be verified from what may have been exaggerated online, while asking why this particular moment unfolded in such a bizarre and unsettling way. Then came an even bigger internet claim that the same man had supposedly appeared around multiple nationally known tragedies. Neat. Some commenters argued that it could simply be coincidence, while others treated the alleged pattern as something too strange to brush aside. But without reliable evidence confirming those appearances or establishing an actual connection between them, the viral theory remains just that, a theory. And then another serious allegation entered the conversation. Reports and online posts claimed that days after Kirk's shooting, the same individual was arrested in connection with alleged illegal material involving minors. Because that is an extremely serious accusation, the exact charges and circumstances need reliable confirmation rather than internet assumptions. Some people immediately questioned the timing and speculated that the arrest prevented further public scrutiny, but that alone does not prove the arrest was designed to silence anyone. Rogan also focused on the timing and questioned whether there was more to understand about what happened. His skepticism gave the story even more traction online, where people began echoing similar suspicions. Still, unusual timing isn't proof of coordination or a cover-up, and those claims would require solid evidence before anyone could treat them as fact. Since then, online communities have gone straight into detective mode. Forums, comment sections, videos, and long threads are packed with people combing through every available detail, trying to separate what actually happened from the mountain of rumors surrounding the case. A major focus has been the background of the man some commenters have labeled the decoy suspect. Online users have tried to link him to multiple nationally known tragedies, asking how the same person could supposedly appear around several major events. But those alleged appearances and connections need credible verification before anyone can treat them as an established pattern. Some people think the explanation could be far less mysterious, that he may simply have been an erratic bystander who drew attention during an already chaotic moment. Others have pushed a much more dramatic theory, asking whether he could have been there intentionally as some kind of distraction. That idea has spread fast online, but there's no established evidence presented here showing that anyone deliberately planted him to mislead investigators or confuse the public. Still, the so-called decoy suspect theory has become one of the strangest angles surrounding the online conversation. Rogan's skepticism has given people even more reason to scrutinize unanswered questions, while critics argue that weird circumstances shouldn't automatically become evidence of a hidden operation. Either way, the gap between confirmed facts and viral speculation is getting seriously crowded. Something about this whole situation keeps leaving people with questions, and online communities are asking one thing louder than ever. What information, if any, is still missing? The further people dig into the story, the more complicated the conversation becomes, with verified details getting tangled up with rumors, theories, and some seriously explosive allegations. Das, sirs. The so-called decoy suspect theory already had internet sleuths working overtime, but the speculation didn't stop there. Even as authorities moved forward with their case against Tyler Robinson, people online kept digging. Podcasters, commentators, and amateur investigators began breaking down photos, videos, witness accounts, and timelines looking for anything they believed had been overlooked. Then the attention shifted toward Turning Point USA. Instead of focusing only on the shooting itself, some online theories started examining what may have been happening inside the organization in the days before Charlie Kirk's death. That opened up a completely different lane of speculation, with people questioning whether internal events could somehow matter to the larger story. Candace Owens helped push that angle into the spotlight when she claimed Kirk had called for a major internal audit roughly a week before his death. That allegation immediately got people digging into what the reported audit was supposed to examine and why it had allegedly been requested. But any connection between an internal audit and Kirk's death remains unproven unless credible evidence establishes one. What surfaced afterward remains unverified, but that hasn't stopped the speculation from spreading fast. Anonymous sources have allegedly claimed that the audit may have focused on a little-known internal division connected to large amounts of donor money that supposedly couldn't be clearly accounted for. Those accusations have not been established as fact, but they've added another mysterious angle for online communities to dissect. Then the whispers got even wilder. Some claims describe this alleged division as operating less like a regular department and more like a private intelligence-style operation. If evidence ever supported something like that, it would obviously raise serious questions. But right now, the claims alone don't prove anything about secret operations, control, loyalty, or political influence. Rumors also started circulating that Kirk may have discovered donations that allegedly never reached their intended destinations. Online theories claimed millions of dollars could have been redirected toward undisclosed projects, PR campaigns, or outside consulting firms with political connections. Again, those are heavy accusations, and without financial records or other credible evidence confirming them, they remain speculation rather than established wrongdoing. Still, the theory quickly took on a life of its own. Some commenters began suggesting Kirk might have been preparing to expose financial problems inside his own organization. From there came the darkest leap yet. Was Kirk somehow stopped because of what he supposedly discovered? It's a dramatic theory, but there's no verified evidence presented here, establishing that an internal audit, or alleged financial issue, provided a motive for his killing. But the twists didn't end there. Online investigators began focusing on reports that several Turning Point USA staff members had left the organization in the weeks before the shooting. According to the claims circulating online, some departures happened quietly, without major public announcements or detailed explanations. And naturally, internet sleuths started digging into the timing. Then another layer entered the mix. Some former staffers were allegedly later connected to other political organizations, while online researchers claimed public records linked at least one individual to a lobbying firm that held government contracts. Those details would need to be independently verified, and even if accurate, they wouldn't automatically establish wrongdoing or any connection to Kirk's death. Still, online communities quickly started building theories around them. That's when Candace Owens pushed the suspicion even harder. During another live stream, she said, "You don't clean house a week before a shooting unless something big was about to come out," framing the reported departures as potentially significant. The quote spread quickly, with viewers debating whether the timing actually meant something, or whether unrelated events were simply being connected after the fact. Owens's framing made the situation sound far more calculated than random. But timing and personnel changes alone don't establish that anyone planned the shooting or that the departures were connected to it. Then Joe Rogan stepped back into the discussion. Responding to the broader claims, he entertained the idea that someone preparing to expose serious wrongdoing could potentially create enemies. That possibility gave online theories another boost, but there remains a major gap between discussing a hypothetical motive and proving that such a motive existed in Kirk's case. Rogan also zeroed in on another detail that bothered him: the speed at which the public narrative around Tyler Robinson seemed to take shape. Information about the suspect, including his name, photo, and an alleged motive, began spreading rapidly after the shooting, and Rogan questioned how so much appeared to come together so quickly. That timing immediately became another talking point. Rogan suggested that, from his perspective, the story seemed unusually polished early on, almost as though parts of the narrative had been prepared in advance. That's a serious implication, though, and the speed of authorities releasing information doesn't by itself prove anything was scripted or predetermined. Still, the idea exploded across the internet. TikTok videos, Reddit discussions, Telegram groups, and other online communities became packed with amateur breakdowns of the evidence. Some users claimed the case against Robinson looked staged, pointing toward alleged text messages and surveillance images they argued were too unclear to definitively identify someone. Those interpretations remain disputed and shouldn't be mistaken for forensic conclusions. Then internet sleuths started going frame by frame. Some claimed they spotted inconsistencies between video timestamps and the lighting visible in certain footage. But without authenticated original files and expert analysis, those observations can't establish that footage was altered or manipulated. And underneath all that noise sits the question driving the speculation: why? Why Kirk? Why that moment? And why during a public student event with cameras and security nearby? Those questions may sound chilling, but answering them requires evidence, not just viral theories. A growing number of people online say they're no longer convinced everything can be brushed off as coincidence. Some have pushed a darker theory that the attack may have been intended as something symbolic, designed to create fear, send a message, or warn others against stepping out of line. That interpretation is unproven, but it has definitely cranked up the tension surrounding the case. Then came the personal accounts. Unverified posts and secondhand stories claim that shortly before the final Q&A, Charlie appeared distracted or unusually uneasy. One attendee was reportedly quoted as saying he kept looking toward the exits, almost like he was expecting someone to show up at any moment. Without a verified first-hand account, though, nobody can confidently say what Kirk was thinking or why he may have been looking around. That eerie observation quickly became one of the most repeated claims surrounding the online discussion. Clips, posts, and comments began dissecting the alleged moment, with people trying to read deeper meaning into every movement. Then even stranger stories started circulating. Several alleged audience accounts described unfamiliar men near the back of the venue, reportedly dressed in plain clothes and wearing earpieces. Some witnesses supposedly believed they didn't resemble ordinary campus security or police. Claims that these men disappeared immediately after the shooting only made the story sound more mysterious. But their identities, roles, and even the accuracy of those accounts would need credible verification before anyone could connect them to the attack. Then the story took an even darker turn. An alleged leaked snippet from a local police radio log started circulating online, with users claiming officers initially believed they were looking for 2 suspects instead of 1. According to those unverified posts, the supposed second person was cleared within about an hour and was never publicly identified. But the authenticity and full context of that radio log would need to be confirmed. That was enough to send online sleuths into overdrive. Some claimed they had saved screenshots of dispatch records before the material supposedly disappeared from public view. From there, one question started dominating the conversation. Who was this alleged second person, and why did that individual seemingly vanish from the public narrative so quickly? Of course, being questioned or temporarily considered during an investigation doesn't automatically make someone a suspect. Candace Owens brought the allegation up during one of her live streams and started breaking down what she believed looked suspicious. "It's like we're watching a movie play out in real time and they expect us not to notice the plot holes," she said. Owens then floated the serious possibility that federal agencies could be protecting someone influential and shaping the narrative presented to the public. No verified evidence establishing that accusation is presented here, but the claim immediately triggered a flood of reactions in her live chat. Meanwhile, parts of Joe Rogan's online audience started digging through public court databases themselves. Some users claimed several records connected to the case had unexpectedly been sealed, while others alleged that access to a ballistic report became restricted within roughly 72 hours. Those claims need independent verification, and sealed or restricted records can have legitimate legal reasons. Still, every unexplained detail gave internet investigators another trail to chase. Rogan reacted to the idea of information being restricted with obvious suspicion. He argued that when records suddenly become harder to access, people naturally start wondering what's being kept out of public view. That reaction quickly reignited the online debate, pulling even more people into a case already drowning in questions, rumors, and competing interpretations. Now the conversation is stretching far beyond this single investigation. Online communities have started searching for supposed patterns, comparing Kirk's case with past controversies involving public figures who challenged their own organizations or raised questions about financial activity. Some discussions have even drawn parallels to whistleblower cases that users believe were never fully explained. But similarities between separate cases don't establish that they're actually connected. Then another claim started making serious noise online. Users alleged that certain mainstream news outlets quietly edited, softened, or removed earlier coverage of the case, particularly headlines that had reportedly presented a lone shooter explanation with greater certainty. News organizations routinely update developing stories as facts change, though, so edits alone aren't evidence of a cover-up. Still, internet sleuths started comparing screenshots. Headlines that allegedly sounded definitive were contrasted with later wording, such as a suspect in custody and pending further review, prompting another wave of speculation. One viral post summed up that suspicion with the question, "Why change the story unless you're hiding something?" It's a powerful line, but changing a headline doesn't by itself prove anyone was hiding information. And then there's Turning Point USA's public response, which has become another major talking point online. Beyond statements mourning Charlie Kirk's death, critics and internet sleuths have questioned why they haven't heard more about the alleged audit, supposed missing funds, or the other theories now circulating around the case. But an organization staying quiet about unverified allegations or an active legal matter doesn't automatically mean it has something to hide. Still, that silence has given the speculation plenty of room to grow. Between Joe Rogan's skepticism and Candace Owens' increasingly bold allegations, people online are pulling apart every detail they can find. To skeptics, the public story feels incomplete. To others, internet theories are simply racing far ahead of what the available evidence can actually support. Either way, the unanswered questions keep stacking up. The conversation has expanded beyond the shooting itself and into claims involving money, influence, internal disputes, and supposedly hidden information. But those pieces don't automatically connect just because they appear suspicious when placed side by side. A real connection would require credible evidence. Some online commenters have become convinced that somebody knows more about what happened to Charlie Kirk than has been publicly revealed. That remains suspicion, not proof. And just when the internet seemed to have examined every possible angle, another wave of rumors hit social media, this time dragging Kirk's wife into the controversy. Those claims would soon push the speculation into even more personal territory. After Charlie's death, his wife reportedly stepped into a more prominent leadership role at Turning Point USA, and the timing immediately became another target for online speculation. Some people viewed the move as a grieving spouse helping carry forward her husband's work, while others questioned whether the leadership transition had already been discussed before the tragedy. But timing alone doesn't establish that anything suspicious was planned. Online sleuths then started digging through her political and organizational connections. Old photographs, screenshots, and alleged insider messages began circulating, with some users claiming those connections showed her expanded role wasn't unexpected. None of that, by itself, proves wrongdoing or links her to Charlie's death. Still, the leadership change quickly became one of the internet's biggest talking points. Then another alleged piece of the timeline grabbed attention. A memo reportedly signed by Charlie on September 2nd was said to name Justin Stray as the organization's new COO. Online claims further alleged that he had been tasked with overseeing a major internal audit focused on tracking millions in funding and identifying possible inefficiencies. Some alleged insiders portrayed that audit as something that could have triggered major changes inside the organization. With Charlie's death occurring shortly afterward, people online quickly started connecting the two events. But the close timing doesn't establish a connection, and claims about the memo, the audit's scope, or any alleged financial problems require credible documentation before they can support a larger theory. Candace Owens pushed the conversation into even more controversial territory. She claimed Charlie had been dealing with serious political and financial pressure before his death, and she raised allegations involving influential figures who supposedly disagreed with him over policy positions and the organization's direction. Those are major claims, though, and they have not been independently established as fact. One narrative spreading online suggested that Charlie had resisted outside influence shortly before his death, leading some users to treat the timing as suspicious. Bill Ackman strongly rejected allegations involving him, calling them absurd and false, and maintaining that his relationship with Charlie had always been respectful. Even so, Owens's comments reignited theories that powerful people could have wanted Charlie silenced. But there is no verified evidence presented here establishing that anyone targeted him for those reasons. Then the online spotlight shifted toward Charlie's widow. Some commenters began speculating that she may have known more about the alleged internal audit or reported power struggles than she had publicly discussed. No solid evidence has been presented here supporting those insinuations, and knowing about internal organizational matters wouldn't establish involvement in Charlie's death. The speculation got even more personal after clips from the funeral began circulating. Some users analyzed her calm, composed appearance and even questioned whether her grief looked genuine. But there's no reliable way to determine someone's guilt, innocence, or private emotions from short funeral clips. People process grief differently, so claims that her tears were staged remain unsupported internet speculation. Her quick return to work became another detail the internet immediately started dissecting. Some commenters treated the timing as suspicious, while others saw it as a completely personal decision about how to handle grief and responsibility. Either way, returning to work quickly doesn't establish guilt, intent, or involvement in what happened. By this point, the online conversation had grown far beyond the shooting itself. Money, politics, alleged internal disputes, and unanswered questions were all being thrown into the same pot, creating a story that felt more complicated by the day. But with verified facts mixed alongside rumors and viral theories, separating legitimate questions from straight-up internet speculation became more important than ever. And one question cut straight through all that noise. Is Charlie Kirk's widow simply being unfairly targeted because people are desperate to find somebody else to blame? Judging her grief, analyzing her expressions, or questioning her work schedule doesn't provide evidence that she had anything to do with her husband's death. Still, some online voices continue asking whether she knew more about the reported internal tensions than she has publicly discussed. Joe Rogan's skepticism and Candace Owens' allegations have kept attention locked on perceived inconsistencies in the broader timeline. But unless credible evidence actually connects Kirk's widow to wrongdoing, suspicion alone can't turn an internet theory into fact. Take the shooting itself. Reports say the suspect managed to reach a rooftop at Utah Valley University without being stopped beforehand, and that detail has become a major focus for people questioning the security response. How does someone reach that kind of position during a high-profile public event? That's a fair question, but answering it requires confirmed details about the security plan, access points, and what personnel actually knew at the time. Then there's the footage, or more specifically, what the public has been able to see. Online users have highlighted clips that appear to show an individual walking away calmly instead of running during the chaos. Others have questioned videos that seem cropped or in before certain moments become clear. But edited clips circulating online don't necessarily represent the complete original footage, so missing frames alone can't prove anything was deliberately hidden. And people still keep coming back to the so-called decoy suspect. Just bakaka. The older man was reportedly heard yelling, "I did it! I did it!" amid the confusion, before later facing unrelated legal trouble. Rogan questioned the timing and suggested it seemed unusually convenient. Still, an unrelated arrest wouldn't necessarily prevent investigators from interviewing someone, and there's no established evidence here that it was intended to block questioning. Put everything together, and it's easy to see why the public conversation has become so messy. Security questions, incomplete footage, and conflicting interpretations have created gaps that online sleuths are racing to fill. Whether those gaps come from ordinary investigative limits, incomplete public information, or something more significant remains unproven. Social media has basically transformed into one massive investigation board. People are lining up timelines, comparing screenshots, replaying clips, and questioning every detail they can get their hands on. From the reported memo Charlie signed before his death, to questions about the older rifle allegedly used, to claims involving sealed records and leadership changes at Turning Point USA, the internet is trying to connect it all. And that's exactly where skepticism has started running wild. For some people, the number of unanswered questions makes the publicly reported account feel incomplete. But a collection of unusual details doesn't automatically mean they're connected, especially when some of the claims circulating online remain unverified. Then comes the darker theory that all the confusion itself could somehow be intentional. Some users have suggested the chaos might serve as a distraction or smokescreen, keeping everyone busy chasing scattered details while something bigger happens behind the scenes. It's a dramatic idea spreading fast, but there's no verified evidence presented here proving the confusion was deliberately created. Meanwhile, new clips, alleged leaks, screenshots, and supposed documents keep hitting social media. Instead of calming the conversation down, each new post seems to open another lane of debate and another round of questions. What initially appeared to be an act of political violence has now become wrapped in a much larger web of online theories involving influence, money, organizational power, and secrecy. For many watching, that uncertainty is feeding distrust, but proving a bigger hidden operation would require far more than suspicious timing and viral connections. Whether this was simply a devastating tragedy or whether credible evidence will eventually reveal more unanswered layers is still being fiercely debated online. What do you think the verified facts actually show, and which theories go too far? Drop your take in the comments, and stay tuned as new information and confirmed updates continue to emerge.